Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, John Knockenberg. I'm a men's divorce coach and a New Jersey divorce attorney and mediator. Today, we're going to answer that age-old question, should you consider divorce a failure? As well as talk about recovering from toxic relationships. My guest is Melanie Verstraete. She is a love and a relationship expert and founder of the Wildheart Life. I love that name. She helps men and women break out of unhealthy relationship patterns and find true love, which is what we all want. Thank you for being here today, Melanie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, John.
It's my pleasure. So I think a good place to start whenever I have such an incredible expert like you on to talk to people is for people to understand who you are and why you're doing this. So why don't you tell our listeners how you got involved in this line of work? And is there anything in your personal life that sort of led you to doing this?
Oh, yeah. And then some. I often tell people that coaching chose me and mentorship. I mean, to me, it's the same thing. I never set out to be a coach. And how it happened was through healing my own relationship crap, in essence. I grew up without my father. Thank God today, he and I have a beautiful relationship. But as a young girl, a child and a young woman, I didn't have him. And I had about 6 stepdads by the time I was 21. So unknowingly, I took on a lot of low self-worth, a lot of unworthiness. I didn't think that I was important. I kind of turned into a chameleon because I was worried if that somebody wouldn't love me, if I wasn't what they needed me to be. And so in essence, I like to call it is like a come to Jesus moment, if you will. A really, really strong epiphany. If anybody here is into any kind of language of spiritual awakening, you could have called it that too. I was in my early 40s. This is about 7 years ago. And I was having this moment in time where I feel like God like smacked me upside my head. And I was contemplating my second divorce. And there I was wondering what the hell is wrong with me? Like, holy shit, Melanie, 2 divorces now. What is wrong with you? And that sounds like you could go down a really negative rabbit hole. But for me, it was a beautiful awakening. It was day one of what would feel like a beautiful life, because up until then, I felt like I was in survival mode. And so the thing that was so amazing and so cool, and I can remember, of course, like it was yesterday, was I realized that, yeah, I can blame X1 and I could blame soon to be X2 of, who they were and who they weren't in the relationships. And, there was belittling, there was talking down to, there was control, there was narcissism, there was emotional abuse. There's all kinds of crap, right? But I'm the one who chose them. That was the real truth, right? So like, what is wrong with me that I choose men like this, choose and marry, right? And so that was, like I said, pretty much around 7 years ago. And I was so determined to never get in a relationship like that again, that I just started working on me like it was my job. And in that space and time, and in that, I like to call unbecoming, unlearning, shedding the layers of the crap, in essence of, I was never unworthy. I was never deserving of crappy relationships like that, right? When I became what I felt my real self, a lot of people could say you became a different person. No, I feel like I actually started to unfold and become who I really am, because who I wasn't the truth. I was never unworthy. I was always good enough, but I took on those beliefs. I took on those lies, right? So in that space of finally finding inner peace for the first time in my whole life, where I felt like like this all the time, like just like a huge knot in my stomach. Finally attracting kings when I was attracting trolls. Finally feeling good about myself, because I like to call that inner critic the shit talker. Whew, the shit talker ran my life. Finally feeling peace, genuine joy, forgiveness and acceptance of self, forgiveness and acceptance of, who my mom was and the roles that she played and my stepdads and the exes and all of that crap, and just truly feeling joyful. It was this knowing that I need to teach this, I need to lead this, and that I had to walk that path in order to know how to show others how to walk that path. And it just became so clear, John, that this is part of what my purpose is to teach others this way, that it doesn't have to be that way. You're not doomed because your parents were. You're not doomed in anything, right? But your belief that you are is what will keep you stuck.
I think the way you talk about this is quite refreshing to a lot of listeners.
Thank you.
You come at it from a practical perspective. You live through it, and you found that this is your purpose in life, is to help others avoid some of these things that you went through. Yeah. I love that. And I do not believe you're in your late 40s. I mean, I heard you just say that. I'm like, what? I don't believe
it. I'm 52 now. I'm 52 now. I wasn't.
Oh my God, it's even worse. It's even worse. And listeners, you're going to have to go and watch the YouTube video and you will agree with me. There is no way. There's no way. But anyway, I digress. Melanie, you're a coach. And one of the things I like to ask coaches that come on the show is, what does being a coach really mean to you? Because we all throw that word around. And I really wish there were more terms for people that are helping others than just the word coach. Because I hear, there's people out there, I mean, you've seen them, Melanie, there's people that are quote unquote life coaches. I still don't know what the heck that means. Yeah. I mean, it's like, so I really want, when people are listening to our conversation, what is it when you tell people you're a coach? What does that mean to you? And what is it that you are hoping to provide to the people that work with you?
I love that you asked that question. Love it, love it, love it, because I have also struggled with that. I don't even like to call myself a coach, because it's truly not the essence of who I am or what I do. But to your point, until there's a better word, I don't know. But I'm going to answer that because I think it's so important. And I'm not going to answer for all coaches. I'm only going to answer for myself. So who I am as a coach is, I'm a guide. I'm an initiator. I'm an activator. I am here to help you understand the truth of who you are, not who I think you should be, not who your mother or your father or your ex-boyfriend or your grandpa or society thinks you should be. I'm here to initiate and activate you into your highest power. And that might sound weird, that like I'm a relationship coach and that's what I'm saying. What I have found is that, and this was true for me and it's true for 99.9999% of everybody I work with, the true core reason why any of us not just get into unhealthy relationships, but also stay, is because we don't have a good relationship with ourselves. We have an unhealthy, toxic relationship with ourselves. And so I help you fall in love with yourself. And I help you understand the truth of who you really are. Not all the layers that you took on because of your religion, because of your sex, because of your gender, because who your parents are, because how much money you make or you don't make. Not all those layers that you took on as beliefs of your truth. I help you shed the layers of all the things that are untrue to reveal the truth of who you are. And then I think it's the Greeks that said, know thyself. So I love that, So I help you to know thyself. And then I also help you to have the courage to be that person, because that is a whole nother level.
I love everything you just said. I think that's a great encapsulation of what probably a coach should be. So I love that. What's interesting is you've heard these stories all the time. In fact, I just got a message from a longtime friend yesterday telling me that they needed to get divorced, and or let me back up, that their spouse wants to get divorced, and then proceeds to tell me that he's been emotionally abused for years. And said, well, I just need to be prepared in case my spouse wants a divorce. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what does that say about somebody who can admit, or at least acknowledges, that they've been emotionally abused for years, yet they're not the ones seeking to make the change. They're not the ones seeking to get out of this relationship. And you're right, it comes back to you. It comes back to the way you perceive yourself. So how do you start to unwind someone's perception of themselves so that they can see that they're entitled to something better than what they currently are living through?
Yeah, it's a pattern that I see and that I notice in those of us who have been in those unhealthy relationships. Right now I'm getting chills. I love when that happens, because it just means like truth is streaming through me. Is they didn't have like the greatest childhood. So they could have mother wounds, they could have father wounds. And the thing that I find is most difficult for most people when they grew up in what society has framed as a normal family, right, or a normal relationship with their parents, the impact that our caregivers have on us as young children can and does stay with us for a very long time, until and unless we're aware, and then we do the work to heal. So I say this is, a lot of people think, well, I was never sexually abused, I was never emotionally abused, I was fine. My dad spanked me, or my dad had to work and he wasn't around, and it's like, it was no big deal, right? And so they can tend to diminish how they feel. But the truth is, when we're little, we have to start giving ourselves more grace, more love, more acceptance around. It doesn't have to be this huge catastrophic event to have an impact on a child. It doesn't have to be something that's so repelling and repulsive to leave a mark on a child and create an imprint of unworthiness, not good enough, abandonment. And again, this is not to point the blame to the parents, because I believe all of us, I'm a parent, that all of us do the best we can with what we have, right? But if your parents didn't grow up in an emotionally evolved upbringing, then they're certainly not going to have the capacity to raise you that way, right? So, I share this because, again, I've had clients where they had normal upbringing, right? But they still had abandonment wounds. They still had unworthiness. They still had thoughts, beliefs about themselves of, I'm not good enough because of this, whatever this is for anybody, right? So really, to answer your question, John, the first step is really just start to unpack this crap that we take on as truth, right? As our upbringing puts us in boxes. Society puts us in boxes. What we look like puts us in boxes. Our ages puts us in boxes, right? We're in all these boxes, and then we put ourselves in these boxes. And the truth is, we don't belong in any box. Like, if I had my way, I would have everybody explode their fucking box, because you're all unique. Everybody is so unique and such a beautiful expression. And we're here to just be who we are, not who society thinks we are, not who our mother thinks we are, not who our ex thinks we are. And when you talk about divorce, right? Like, I can talk about how I felt, and I think it would really help your listeners a lot, especially with my first divorce, because my first divorce, I had 3 kids with this man. Okay. And because I had a revolving door of stepdads in and out, to me, divorce meant I was my mother. Holy shit, no way. Right? No way. And so do you see these conditioned little programs, right? One divorce means you're on your way to the 6th, Melanie, right? But it's not logical, it's not rational, it's part of your program, if you will. What embeds in your subconscious, your unconscious, your nervous system. So I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't leave this man, even though I knew the relationship wasn't healthy, even though, this might resonate with some people listening. I had to force myself to have sex with my own husband. Yuck. Who wants to be in that space? I didn't like him as a man, as a father of my children. And the only reason I stayed for as long as I did is because we had kids together. I did it for the kids. This is the worst thing you can ever do. And I'm not a proponent for divorce, but I'm also not a proponent for staying in something that is so toxic and so bad for you because society thinks that you're wrong, you're bad, you just walk around like a scarlet letter, Melanie. Okay. Right. And that's how I felt initially. And I had these moments of, oh God, I can't be divorced. I can't do this. And what gave me the courage, because at first I was worried what they would think, right? First of all, who's they and who cares? And the thing that gave me the courage, John, and I just really want your listeners to contemplate in their own lives, right? Was that without getting into how this man treated me, my very first thought was, and my kids were 3, 5, and 7 at the time. They were little. I had 1 girl and 2 boys. I thought, if I stay in this marriage, then I am setting the example of how a man should treat a woman for my daughter. No freaking way do I want my daughter to be treated the way that this man treats me. Nope. If I stay in this marriage, I am setting the guidepost, if you will, to my boys that this is the proper way to treat a woman. Hell no. This ends with me. My children are better off seeing us apart and seeing examples of healthy relationships than us together, because it's the so-called right thing to do. And that's what gave me the courage to leave. I was leaving for my kids. I wasn't staying for my kids because I knew the weight that would carry for them. And I didn't want them to continue on that toxic burden that was obviously running in my lineage.
Anyone who listens to this podcast knows everything you just said, I say all the time, because staying in a relationship for children is horrible for a variety of reasons. But the most notable is the one you just said. You're teaching your children what a relationship is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have kids, you need to do it for yourself. If you don't have kids, do it for yourself. I mean, what's interesting is you were talking about a little bit about, our subconscious. And of course, as you know, most of our subconscious is developed, before we're age 7. So, which is interesting because I have an 11-year-old, and I started going through that kind of mindset training when she was a very, very young child. And I was scared shitless daily that I was going to fuck her up daily. Because I was like, oh my God, because, it is what I think what's important to know is that your parents, and I think you said this in a different way, your parents, they taught you how to perceive the world and how to think, and they didn't do it in a malicious way. They didn't do it in a way to purposely make your life difficult. It's just, it happens. It's just the way that they were taught to experience the world. And so they've put it on you. And a lot of times we're not even conscious of it. And that's the big problem. And that's sort of why whenever you start to look at why your relationships aren't working, the first place to look at is in the mirror. It always is, because you have to get to the bottom of that. And that's not an easy process all the time to figure out what that is. How long do you, in your experience working with your clients, does it take for someone to really fully understand, their core wounds, their core beliefs, the things that are really, deep down, deep inside their brain that are really influencing the way they're perceiving relationships and the world? How long does it usually take someone to realize that, and how difficult is it to get someone to actually commit to work on themselves so they can navigate around those things?
Yeah, well, the time is such a variant for everybody, because they're coming to me at a different level of awareness, perception, consciousness, right? So it can vary. I work with people from 3 months to like over 3 years. And it's, when they've worked with me for multiple years, it's not because they're not getting results. It's because they're getting such astronomical results. They're like, more, help me get more, right? So we're all so different. So it's really hard for me to put like an actual gauge. I have seen people create shifts and transformations in as little as 17 days. So maybe that's helpful and will make people be more hopeful. It's not, I don't like to use the word hard, because I think it's just our perception of what is hard and what is easy that makes it so, right? Looking in the mirror though, okay? Like a real dose of honesty with self. I'm the person who did this. What the fuck? Right? That is probably, if I got to use the word hard, the hardest thing for any of us to do. But it's the truth. It is the truth. And I'm not saying horrible things don't happen. And I'm not even going to get into things that happen during childhood. And does anybody deserve any of these awful things? No. But there has to be a point in time when you are an adult, you are no longer a child, right? So you have full responsibility of your life, your thoughts, your choices. You have to take that power back, because living in victimhood is doing nothing for no one, especially not you. So it's easy, especially in our culture today, John. Holy shit, we're so in our victimhood. I just want to go around shaking people.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up. But again, there's no power in that. There's no power in that. And if you don't like your relationships, if you don't like your life, if you were in a space and time where you're like, what the hell have I been doing, right? Then allow that to be your let's look in the mirror. I'm not going to go down the negative rabbit hole and self-loathe, and there's nothing productive in that. But I am going to take some responsibility here, and I am going to start to do better. I'm going to become better for me, to your point, for me. Because when I'm better, everything else gets better around me. Like if I don't like my outside world, if I don't like the little world that I live in this big world, then only I can change it. Only I can do this. No, nobody's going to change it for me. Nobody can do that for me, even if you find the love of your life, right? Even if you find your soulmate, your one, whatever language floats your boat. If you're not happy inside with yourself, you can never be happy truly with them. So it's not, we're so programmed to look outside for our happiness, right? Look, oh, when I get that person, oh, this one's going to be the one to make me happy finally. Because that other one was a jerk. I should have saw all those red flags. Insert sarcasm, okay, for everybody who's listening. I should have seen he was such a jerk, and I knew it. What a douchebag, blah, blah, blah. I'm just throwing, crap out there. But this one is it, right? And I always tell all my clients, it's crap. I always tell all my clients before they work with me, you're going to date the same person in a different body until you do the work, because it's you that is attracting the same kind of person. So again, the game is always within. It's always within.
Yeah, that's that old phrase. How do you expect anything in your life to change if you don't change? That's true. I mean, in my world as a divorce attorney, I mean, to a person, people who are getting divorced routinely, even I just had a divorce that just happened a few weeks ago, where even after almost 2 years of going through this process, at the very end, she still could not think about anything other than everything he did to her and how he's responsible for this, and how, oh, well, if he wants that, well, he's the one that wanted the divorce, so he should. There's still at no point any recognition of any part that she played in the marriage not continuing. And you're absolutely right. If a marriage ends, there is, I'll use fault right now, but there's fault on both sides. There's fault to go around. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're married to like a physical abuser. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you have to understand in that situation. I think what we're talking about here is you have to understand your fault there maybe is, why were you attracted to this person in the first place? So that you can acknowledge that, you acknowledge you were attracted to this person, figure out why, so that you don't do it again. Because you're right. How many people, I mean, there's a reason second marriages fail at a higher rate than first marriages. And it's for the very simple reason that people go out and marry the same person again. It's a body. It's like, it happens. So I really feel like that's the core problem here, is that there's no sense of personal responsibility. I mean, that victimhood you were talking about is out of control right now, but no one takes any personal responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. Always. So when we look at marriages, and I teed this up in the opening, people get a little like weird about failing at something. Right? And this is more men than women. Women will stay in marriages for a lot of the reasons you said, for more what they perceive as important reasons, like, I want to stay in the marriage for the children, to make sure that their home is, stable. Men tend to stay in marriages for more like reasons of like, I don't want to pay money. Oh, and by the way, I'll be looked at as a failure in my, my circles. So I guess a question for you is divorce a failure? I think I already know the answer to your question, but to this question, is divorce a failure? And how should you look at the fact that you're getting divorced moving forward? Because it's not a scarlet letter. This isn't, the 17th century. It's not a scarlet letter anymore. So how should you actually look at yourself in the mirror when you're getting divorced, and be able to look at yourself and say, it's all right, it's okay, and what's the next chapter in my life?
That's a heavy one to unpack. So some people are not meant to actually be in our lives forever. And I know that when you're in it and you're so hurt, right? Because it at the core of anger is grief and sadness, right? I'm so sad that this has ended, but anger feels better than this despair. So it's understanding that we both still got something out of this marriage. There was still something here. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what worked, what didn't work, what to do better next time, how I screwed up, if you will. And again, this is not, no amount of this is to make you feel bad about yourself. Awareness is everything. Here's something that I see a lot in marriages, and I'll just like kind of paint this picture because I'm sure a lot of people go through it. They come to the space of like, we're roommates now. So they stop having sex, or it's not as hot as it once was. And she doesn't want it anymore, maybe, or he wants it too much. Okay, these are like their words. And so you come to this, well, what happened? It used to be so much fun, and there was romance, and there was fire, and there's intimacy, and all of this, and now it's like boring, right? You may as well have like a roommate. And instead of exploring how can we do this better, right? A lot of times we end it, or if we don't end it, we cheat, or we stay because of what they think, but we're really not happy. We're freaking miserable. And like when we get on our deathbed, we're like, oh my God, what did I do with the rest of my life? So I know I'm getting off all on these tangents here, but the real truth is, if it's something that's really unhealthy, you shouldn't be in it anyway. And you need to really start examining why. What part of you is willing to accept somebody to not treat you good? And this isn't the occasional argument. I'm talking about consistent, right? Because none of us are perfect. We're all human. And in this day and age of personal development, what I feel might be the next wave of divorces, or the next wave of like relationships not working, is people that have like unrealistic expectations, right? Like way up here. Unless you're fully healed, you've gone to therapy for years, you worked on your mother wounds, your father wounds, you're absolutely perfect, you're all the things that I want, I'm not getting in a relationship. So, I mean, there's a lot for us to unpack here, John. But
yeah, we're not, we're not going to solve it all on this podcast. But it's a very, but that's exactly why you need to work with somebody to help you unpack it, because it is a lot to unpack. I found that what we were just saying about like sex in marriages to be very interesting, because yet again, everyone looks, men in particular get very upset about, the lack of a sexual relationship. Mm-hmm. And then they don't even understand that there is all kinds of underlying reasons why that's happening. Yeah. And there's no self understanding of what you're contributing to what's going on in a relationship. Mm-hmm. Because, and I think that and again, this is one of the things with men and women, everyone sees things differently. There's a reason why someone wrote a book. Women are from Venus, men are from Mars. There's a reason for that. And I find it I say this all the time, that men will come to me all the time and say, like, my wife wants a divorce. I didn't know this was coming. She just woke up one day and said, I want a divorce. And I almost have to mute myself and not laugh, because I'm like, listen, my man, she told you how unhappy she was and how this wasn't working for her about probably 700 times over probably 5 years or 10 years. And you didn't listen. That's why you're completely, blindsided. I hear that word a lot. You're blindsided by this divorce. And it really goes back to just not being understanding about what you're contributing to either a successful marriage or a unsuccessful marriage, because we all contribute. It's easy to look back at when you start a hot relationship with somebody, and you're like, you see them, you have butterflies in your stomach, and you're having hot sex, it seems like you love everything's the same. But guess what? People get older, we all change over time. And people who aren't changing are dying. They always are. And what's interesting is, if you don't work on yourself and your spouse is doing things to improve and work on themselves, maybe it's not mindset training, it could be anything. They're working on themselves. They're going to leave you in the dust. They're just going to. And so I really like going back to like the younger population, because you started talking about that. First of all, they're just not getting married as much anymore. The divorce rate's coming down in our country, but it's not because marriages are all of a sudden more successful. It's because fewer people are getting married. Yeah. And so I wonder if you've been seeing that and kind of, talking to people that are having relationship problems, if there's if people just don't want to do this marriage thing anymore? Is it just something that people are just because they see all this stuff that's been going on, they see all the things that we were talking about right here, and they're like, why would I want to be like bound to somebody in a marriage, rather than just be able to like pick up my keys and walk out the door and just leave someone forever? What are your thoughts on that? I know it's kind of off topic, but I think that you're talking about it's a generational thing that's happening now. And it's very real. And it has a lot to do with the way that we're all perceiving relationships. And it might have a little bit to do with what we saw our parents go through. You know, you and I are basically the same generation. You know, it was not real common for my friends' parents to be divorced. There were a few, but it certainly wasn't like now, where my daughter's class, probably 25% of the kids in there have divorced parents.
Yeah. There's a lot that I think contributes to it. Well, one, some of your listeners may or may not like this. One, women are making it way too easy for guys to be in situationships. And so there's lack of courting, there's lack of intimacy, there's lack of chivalry, of romance, of dating. Why? Because they'll give it to you on the first date. You don't even have to work for it. And you know what? This might trigger some people, but it's too bad. I'm here to have some real talk. So that's one contribution, okay, that I've seen. And of course, you know, my perspective is a little bit unique from others because I'm like neck deep in it, right? Another thing is that society is turning more women into men and men into women. And I mean like energetically, right? So men are way more passive. They're more like doormats. They are getting in relationships with women where they allow them, and I use that word lightly, to control and criticize them instead of standing up for themselves and having boundaries. Again, and then if you go on the women's side of it, there's a whole boss babe movement, which is bullshit as far as I'm concerned. And it's a hyper independent woman living in like masculine energy, right? And she's like, I got this. I don't need you, right? I don't need a man because I make the money now and I could do this and la 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 la. But actually, secretly, all she wants is a real man, but she can never have a real man because she is the man. So she's a repellent to the very kind of man that she wants. So now we got that. So now instead of us coming together the way that we were created to be, right? We're like this. We're in competition with each other. And then I hear a lot of men talk about like, forget it. Like, I'm just done. Like, I've been with so many women and they've ripped my heart out, and they've ruined them in essence, right? Of course, you know, the man has the control there, but in his mind, right? And then with the women, the same thing. I've been mistreated. I've been, you know, I got married and I bought into the fairy tale and I gave up my career, and then he left me with nothing. And now I'm working all these jobs to take care of these kids, right? So there's a lot of bitterness out there. That's one of them, right? And then men are way more feminine than they've ever been, and women are way more masculine than they've ever been, which is keeping us divided more and more and more. So why would we want to come together? And sex has become really easy, really, really, really easy. It used to be, and again, I'm not talking any kind of shit about women. Everybody should do whatever it is that they think is right for them. Zero judgment. Just pointing out things that I see is a huge shift, because it used to be a man would have to properly date a woman, court her, romance her, love her, protect her, provide, do all these, you know, more traditional type things. And even if the men are out there right now that want to do that, you got the boss babes out there going, don't get the door for me. how dare you do that? I can get my own door. What do you think? I'm weak so there's a lot of conflict that is contributing to this, I believe.
I don't think I've ever heard that specifically before, but I think you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It's I mean, you pick up your phone, order dinner on Uber Eats, and then go over another app and order sex for after dinner. I mean, it's super easy now.
Yes.
It's very fascinating. Well, I want to get back to toxic relationships for a moment, which is kind of shifting in a different direction now. But I'm curious, Melanie, how can you tell? Let's talk to someone who's sitting in a relationship right now. They're not happy, but they really don't know why, because they're really not doing the work to figure out why. They're just sitting there and they know they're unhappy. Yeah. Maybe they don't really are even thinking about divorce, because it takes a lot of people, it takes a while for them to get to that point.
Yes.
How do you know if you're truly in a toxic relationship? And I guess more broadly, what really is a toxic relationship?
That's a great question. So toxic, you could say toxic tends to trigger a lot of people. I had somebody totally call me out on social media, and I was like, dude, calm down. It's modern language. Okay. I know none of us are truly toxic. Okay. But we do have toxic tendencies. So toxic, unhealthy. Let's look at just unhealthy, right? What's an unhealthy relationship? Well, there can be lots of things to unpack there. If you're in a relationship and your person is belittling you, that's not healthy. They're talking down to you, calling you names. Again, I want to reiterate, everything I talk about, I'm not talking about a one-time thing here. I'm talking about consistent behavior, right? Because we can all flip out and have a bad day and maybe say a name or two that we shouldn't have said, and then have such regret and apologize and make it better, right? And not do it again. I'm not talking that. I'm talking consistent. So belittling, what does that mean? Calling your partner a name or being called a name over and over again. What are you, stupid? Why are you being such a bitch? You're such an asshole. Things like that, right? We can all totally relate to that. If you're hearing that over and over and over again, or you're that person saying that over and over again, that shit's not healthy. You need to learn a way to communicate in a more loving, accepting way, right? That's toxic. Somebody who gives you the silent treatment, won't talk to you for days as they're trying to punish you because you pissed them off for whatever reason. That's toxic. Somebody who won't apologize. They refuse to take ownership of their wrongness and whatever they did to hurt your feelings. And so they won't apologize. They refuse. That's not healthy. Somebody who likes to guilt you or shame you, try to manipulate you into doing things, right? Somebody who uses sex as a weapon. They'll give you sex if you give them what they want, or they won't, or they'll withhold sex. That's toxic. So, I mean, there's more. There's more. But it's if I reflect back to who I was in those two past marriages, you feel it. You feel it in your body. Our nervous system is our guidance, okay? But if we're used to feeling bad, then it feels normal. It feels comfortable even. But I knew that both of my husband, it felt like shit when they belittled me. That feels like shit. And then what do? To defend yourself, you retaliate, right? And then you start calling them names back because how dare you talk to me like that? I thought you loved me. I thought there was respect here. So what it feels like when you are in a toxic, unhealthy relationship. The problem is we like to lie to ourselves. The problem is we like to tell ourselves, well, it'll get better. He'll change. She'll change. If I do this thing, it'll get better. If I have more sex with him, it'll get better. If I have a kid, that'll save our marriage. I've heard that crazy stuff before. And we lie to ourselves, that's the bottom line. So we have to stop lying to ourselves. We really do. If we're in a relationship, okay, belittling, I think, is one of the most common things that a lot of people don't really notice or pay attention to. And our partner talks to us in a demeaning way, you got to be able to stand up for yourself. You have to be able to say, hey, listen, I know you're having a bad day or whatever, but don't talk to me like that. I do not deserve that. You're like, right? And again, and it's not, when you have boundaries, it comes from this place of self-love, self-respect, and love of them too. So you're not launching into this, poison download of all your toxicity of, oh, you're going to belittle me. Oh, now I'm going to unload on you. I'm going to unload the past 5 years of all the ways that I shouldn't even be with you. Right. And that's what we will tend to do. So it's so important for us to just stop lying to ourselves, stop pointing the finger, and notice, right? It's all about the awareness. Just start to notice. And like I was trying to share with you, John, it's like we know what it feels like to feel bad. We know if we're being called a name, it doesn't feel good. We know if we're being given the silent treatment, it doesn't feel good. We know if we overhear our partner talking shit about us to their friends, that doesn't feel good, right? So it's like, just start noticing and asking yourself some questions.
Yeah, and certainly don't blame yourself for the way that they're treating you. I mean, that is that I see that more with women than men, but it certainly is bad. And also, I think it's important to note that the way you're talking about toxic and an unhealthy relationship is really just from a more of a like a generic form of that's a relationship that you shouldn't be in anymore. There are even more severe examples when we get into like the domestic violence territory that are toxic relationships really to an extreme. And just because, and I think you may have said this earlier, but just because your spouse isn't hitting you or, not letting you access to money or, engaging in like what would be traditional domestic violence doesn't mean you're not in a toxic relationship.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of people, when they think about toxic relationship and they think about this, they sort of look at it through the prism of, well, but my spouse isn't hitting me. Oh, my spouse lets me do things. And they sort of discount it because it doesn't rise to the level of domestic violence. How do you talk to people about that? Because I can imagine someone saying, well, it's not good, but he's not that bad, or she's not that bad because, doesn't hit me, lets me use the bank account. I can go out with my friends if I want. And just discounting all the other shit that's going on in the house.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I talked about that, such general and kind of lighter things that can kind of go unnoticed, right? So you just made me think of something. I remember when I told my first husband that I was gonna divorce him, that he was like, I don't hit you. I'd pay for things, right? And I'm like, oh, husband of the year trophy here now for you. Right? It's like, what? There's more to it than that, right? So we settle. That is probably the core of it. We settle. I settled in both of those relationships. I settled, and I knew I was settling. I knew I deserved better, but that program, my subconscious, my unconscious, the root cause of my unworthiness, my people pleasing, my let me turn into a chameleon so I can morph into whatever you want so you love me and you don't leave me. That was my autopilot. Like that runs us 95% of the time until we create a new one. So that's why we tend to do things that we know better. I knew better than to get in a relationship with somebody who was controlling and jealous. I knew better logically, but my program didn't know better. And that's another thing most people don't understand. They're like, program? What the hell is she talking about? It's not a program. Yeah, we're all running on a program, okay? We all have all our individual programs that we're all running on until something shakes us awake. That's like, wait a minute, I think I need a reboot because this program I got going on right now sucks. This program is bringing me jerks and gold diggers and whatever, right? Again, I like to play around and be sarcastic. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or not, John.
Of course. I mean, listen, I think this conversation, just if nothing else, you open your eyes. Open your eyes. If you think something's off in your marriage, it probably is, but it doesn't mean that it's not fixable. Number one.
Yes.
I mean, everything we're talking about here, I mean, your first option hopefully will be, is there a way to fix it? Can you explain to your husband or wife what it is that they're doing that is making you feel the way you're feeling, and seeing whether you can have a behavior change? I mean, just because someone is, doing some of the things that you were talking about, Melanie, there could be, it could be like something where someone maybe is just really having a bad time themselves.
Yeah.
And they're just taking it out on their spouse inappropriately, but maybe there's a chance you can change it. But I mean, at some point, enough is enough. I mean, at some point, if someone doesn't change, I mean, whether you give them 6 months, a year, or 10 years, I mean, I've seen people give 20 years, whatever it is. If they're not going to change, you got to take action, because you only live once. And there are other fish in the sea. There are other people out there that will treat you right, that will love you, that will provide a fulfilling life, the one time you have to live on earth. You want to be, everyone's entitled to be happy. And I think if you take nothing else from this conversation, it's that absolutely not a single person has to live in a toxic relationship. Not a single person. And if you do, it's only your fault. It really is. Yeah. So understand that. And if you need help, Melanie, I'm sure, would be more than happy to help you figure out, what you need out of relationships and what your next relationship might look like. So, Melanie, would you like to tell our listeners, if anyone would like to work with you, how they would do that, how they would contact you, and the types of services you offer?
Yeah, I want to say one more thing before I say that, if I may.
Of course.
I think the most important, and I'm going to unpack this a second before I say it, because everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, of course it is, but most of us don't do this well. The most important gift we have in relationships is our ability to communicate. The problem is most of us don't. We don't communicate in a way that is effective. We don't communicate in a way in order to understand and to be understood. We usually communicate in a way to try to be right, to win. And there's nobody that's ever winning. So that's a skill. It's how can I tell you that if I'm unhappy in our marriage, how can I say this in the most loving, not pointing my finger or casting judgment on you that it's your fault because I'm in this too, right? So how can I articulate it with the most amount of love, the most amount of acceptance of, I really want to talk about this thing because it's important for us to get on the same page. This is how I feel, without doing this or condemning or poking or criticizing or any of that, because automatically we're going to go wall up, guard up, because of course we're going to try to defend ourselves, right? So how can we lay down that I must win this argument, because if you love this person, trying to win is nobody's winning, okay? What's winning is you're digging your grave of divorce, is in essence what's winning, right? So if you truly love the person and you want to make it work, then you need to learn how to articulate your words in a way that comes from love at its core. Love, acceptance, understanding, and wanting to be loved, understood, and accepted as well. So I just wanted to say that before I got into ways I can help people. Well, the name of my company is the Wildheart Life, so you can just Google the Wildheart Life. You can find me on most social. I'm primarily on Facebook and Instagram, so it's Melanie Verstraete. I have a new online workshop coming up called Bad at Love. For obvious reasons, it's going to be 5 days. It starts on April 15th. I work with people one-on-one, privately. Of course, that's going to be the most impact, most bang for your buck, if you will, so to speak. And I'm also launching a brand new membership where people can understand the ABC, the XYZ without the hefty hefty. Why don't you say hefty? It's not even hefty without the investment of private coaching. Okay, it's not even hefty. What the hell am I even saying here? Okay, did I scramble all?
Yeah, and quite frankly, and I'll just say this because most of the average people in the world,
yes,
haven't really worked with coaches, haven't gone out and hired people to help them with things, and most people live in the therapy, medical insurance, that whole world.
Yes.
Always, if you find someone that you think can help you, doesn't matter who it is, do not concentrate on how much something's going to cost. I'm going to get on a soapbox for just a second.
Yeah, do it.
It's all about the outcome. You have to concentrate on the outcome. If this person can help you achieve X outcome, is it worth that amount of money? Forget about how many sessions or how much this costs, or you have to get in the mindset to even start to help someone change your mindset. The first thing you have to do is to understand that you're hiring somebody to help you achieve an outcome. And the price that's being charged, it really is two things. One is obviously to compensate someone who has honed their skill to help people like you. But also in a lot of ways, it's you telling yourself that you're worth it and that you're worth the change that you're about to get. And just because I can imagine most of your average people, whenever they work with anybody in the coaching industry or anyone outside of, like I said, the health insurance, and outside of a health insurance, someone who takes health insurance, is immediately going to see they're going to see things, they're going to see, prices and things that are probably slightly more than what they're accustomed to paying in their everyday life for things. You have to focus first on, can this person help me? Do I think they can help me? And if you think they can help you and you have a problem that they can help solve, invest in yourself. It will pay you back so many times in dividends. I can tell you, I can personally attest to this. I've done coaching in my past that cost more money than I ever thought I'd spend on something. And it has done nothing but enhance my life. But regardless, I really feel like if you're in a difficult relationship, or you're just looking to get into a new relationship and you just want it to be better, you want to figure out the best version of yourself, you want to figure out how you can really have this great relationship and this be the last one, the person that you're gonna be with the rest of your life, Melanie sounds like she's an excellent person to work with. And I hope some of our listeners take you up on going, doing some of your courses or talking to you, because I think you could help a lot of people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here.